please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the national anthem of Barbados. You may be seated. Thank you. Once again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I extend a heartwarming welcome to Day 2 of the Regional Security and Justice Summit that marks an important milestone. an important milestone for regional cooperation towards one of the main challenges facing our region today. First, let me thank all distinguished authorities, including ministers, deputy and vice ministers, advisors, and directors from Latin America and the Caribbean, ministries of justice and security participating in this summit, representatives from other nations, bilateral cooperation institutions, multilateral organizations and institutions working on security and justice issues across the Caribbean, Latin America, and globally. We had a very inspired and productive day yesterday, and we look forward to continuing with our agenda today. We will start the morning with the moment we have all been waiting for, the official launch of the Latin American and Caribbean Alliance for Security, Justice, and Development, and the Alliance's Caribbean chapter, One Safe Caribbean. We are thrilled to have with us the highly respected and esteemed presence of Ilan Goldfan, President of the Inter-American Development Bank, who will open with us remarks on the vision and overview of the Alliance and the Caribbean chapter, One Safe Caribbean. We will then hear from Attorney General of Barbados, the Honorable Dale Marshall, on behalf of host country Barbados. Monica Palencia, Minister of the Interior of Ecuador and the pro tempore President of the Alliance. The Honorable Dr. Horace Anthony Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security of Jamaica. Right Honorable David Lyndon Lammy, Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, will be joining us. And finally, our own Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Amor-Motley. After hearing from these distinguished guests, we will proceed with the official signing of the Declaration of the Alliance. Without further ado, I give the floor to IDB President, Mr. Ilan Goldfan.
Good morning. So nice to see all of you here. Thank you, my dear friend, Prime Minister Mia Motley, for hosting us. Estimada Ministra Mónica Palencia, muchas gracias por estar acá. The Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, thank you. Attorney General Dale Marshall, thank you very much. We'll be joined by the Honorable David Lammy. I also want to greet all of you, ministers, the different authorities from various countries. They are all here today, and this is very symbolic. It's an honor to count with your presence and your support on this very important day. Indeed, today we are launching the Alliance for Security, Justice, and Development and its Caribbean chapter, the One Safe Caribbean. The Alliance is key. It's an initiative to address a phenomenon that affects all of us. In Latin America and the Caribbean, it is the insecurity and in particular, the organized crime. I took office 2 years ago. One issue has been mentioned time after time in my engagement. What can we do? How can we support you in dealing with violence and organized crime? And it's easy to know why are they asking us that. Every year, in Latin America and the Caribbean, 3.4% of GDP is lost to the impacts of crime. It's a big number every year. A staggering cost that drains economies and disrupts lives. Organized crime accounts for nearly half of all homicides in the region. And it's growing more sophisticated. It's growing transnational, deeply entrenched. It's an escalated threat to citizens and governments. My friends, we have a shared challenge. It demands bold, coordinated action like we're doing today to combat these networks, these businesses, and enhance public safety. That's why we are having the Alliance for Security, Justice, and Development that's emerging as a crucial initiative to address the threat of organized crime. My friend Prime Minister Motley raised at the CARICOM Heads of Government in April last year and made a call for greater regional cooperation to fight the drivers of transnational organized crime. And here we are. The Alliance can serve as an umbrella under which the common challenge of organized crime can be tackled through regional sharing and solution development. I'm proud to announce that we are having already 18 countries and 11 organizations that will officially join the Alliance today, 18 of our 26. This is unprecedented. And I must tell you that others are coming, and they will be joining us in the next few days. A regional leadership steering group, and I would like to thank my friend Monica, Minister, because it's a steering group that has the presidency of Ecuador, but we have Barbados, Argentina, Costa Rica, Chile, Brazil, and Paraguay to help us coordinate. Never before there was such an interregional effort, at least from us, from the economic side also, in bringing together key stakeholders from the public sector, security, interior ministers, police, intelligence agencies, with the private sector and the civil society. The Alliance is based on 3 pillars. First, the social pillar, protecting the populations and communities that are most vulnerable and most exposed to the influence of organized crime. That's the first pillar. Second pillar, strengthening the state, strengthening the institutions, strengthening the security institutions, and other strategic sectors to improve performance and the effectiveness and the efficiency of the responses of the state to organized crime. And the third pillar, last but not least, reducing financial flows, illegal financial flows, and curbing illicit markets. To reduce the operational capacity, the power, the influence, and legitimacy of criminal groups. We have been saying that we want to take the oxygen out of the organized crime. The Alliance will have a network. This network will complement the other networks that will exist, will coordinate with different stakeholders. Importantly, it will mobilize resources with the convening power of a development bank like the IDB. It will align different regional initiatives where the country needs the diversity of these stakeholders, from security ministers to local governance to financial intelligence, underscores the complexity of the challenge and the critical need to coordinate collective action. If we are facing an organized crime that is transnational, we need to be organized and we need to be regional. Like Latin America, the Caribbean also faces organized crime challenges. That's why we are launching the One Safe Caribbean, which is one chapter of the One Caribbean, and is also part of this effort. We have technical working groups. So what we do at the IDB is to be very concrete. So we already have working groups that focus on the vulnerable populations. Let me give you examples. We focus on reducing risk factors like recruitment into criminal groups of vulnerable populations. we're going to focus on the youth engagement. We're going to focus on prevention of violence on them. And we're going to focus on coordinating against human trafficking. We have heard a strong call from the countries in the working groups, even yesterday during the technical meetings, for a comprehensive, systematic approach that includes sectors also like education and youth employability programs. So if you're going to deal with the youth, if you're going to go to the vulnerable populations, you need to think about education, you need to think about employment. They emphasize the importance of interventions to protect spaces, to learn about prevention strategies, to look at vulnerable populations like the indigenous people. On institutional strengthening, they propose actions that include developing a criminal records exchange system that has been used in Europe, for example. Establishing guidelines for policing high crime and high violence areas, intelligence. We need to train. We need to coordinate these units. We heard also from the groups the importance of leveraging technology to address organized crime. There was a strong demand to enhance collaboration among Latin American countries and to replicate the successful experience from other regions. As I mentioned, the EU approach to sharing information on prior convictions. We can do it here too, in Latin America and the Caribbean. Finally, we have heard about the financial power of criminal groups. And we have heard that the priority action should focus on understanding the illicit market value chains so that we can act on them. Improving coordination, for example, to combat money laundering, tied, for example, to illegal mining, even in places like the Amazon, use satellite surveillance, forensic tools, isotopic sample banks to trace origins. All of this we have heard from the working groups. So we have been progressing already. So we are launching today with concrete progress, concrete groups, concrete ideas. I am very happy with the engagement of the Caribbean countries and the key partners. We have key partners, has the UK, thank you very much, has the US, Canada, Spain, a lot of international organizations. We have a definition of the governance structure. So the first meetings of the 3 technical working groups have taken place. We are building a momentum, and we have a roadmap for 2025. So you may be asking, why is the IDB? Why is the role of the IDB? The IDB support is as concrete as the alliance. The IDB will provide technical assistance, financial support, drawing on 2 decades. You know that we are the only NDB that has dealt with security in the last 2 decades. So we have some experience. We're going to get more experience. And we're going to provide technical assistance to that. We will do something very important, which is mobilize resources. But mobilize resources to do what? To develop pilot project, testing innovative solution, to scale up the good examples, the good experiences, to ensuring a regional impact. Let me give you numbers. Since 2008, we have invested 1.8 billion in security initiatives. So, 1.8 billion, more than 10 years. But recently, the funding that we gave, just our funding, has surged from 190 million, but in 2025, the 190 will become $1 billion in investments in the region. So 5 times more. So we are formalizing the commitments today. We look ahead to 2025, to the Alliance, to the One Safe Caribbean. We stand together. Organized crime is complex and pervasive, but it must be overcome. So we are bringing it together, and I'm going to cite the countries: Argentina, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Suriname, Uruguay. We have the OAS, we have the Interpol, we have the Regional Security System, we have the World Bank, we have the CAF, we have CARICOM, we have the Caribbean Development Bank, we have the UNDP, the ILA. We're all joining forces, you see, and it's growing. I'm getting that Mexico and Colombia will be joining in the near future. So we are hearing all of you. You are all joining. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. St. Lucia wants to join, others want to join. I know also non-regionals want to join, like the US, Canada, Netherlands. So thank you very much. The IDB is proud to support all of this alliance. Together, we are building a safer, stronger, and more prosperous region for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Goldfan, for your perspective, insight, motivating, and supportive words. I now give the floor to Attorney General of Barbados, the Honorable Dale Marshall.
The Honorable Mina Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, Dr. the Honorable Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica and its Minister of National Security, Dr. Right Honorable David Lammy, Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Development, ministers from Latin America and the Caribbean, Mr. President, Ilan Golfan, President of the IADB, IDB staff, members of the Diplomatic Corps, diplomatic partners, summit delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome back to those of you who were here yesterday, and for those of you who have only arrived, welcome. It is an honor to join you all this morning to what can only be termed as a signature event as we launch the Alliance for Security, Justice and Development and the Alliance's Caribbean Chapter 1 Safe Caribbean. These are initiatives that have tremendous potential to make real and lasting change in our sub-regions, offering our citizens a level of peace, security, and development that many have hitherto not enjoyed. One Safe Caribbean is part of the IDB's larger One Caribbean program, which envisages a comprehensive approach to promoting sustainable development in the Caribbean through coordination at the regional level to leverage resources, cooperation, and economies of scale. I am pleased that citizen security is one of the priority areas, and this is exemplified here today with the launching of One Safe Caribbean. Yesterday, we had a magnificent day. We had good and productive engagement as we looked at the three pillars of the alliance. It was, of course, acknowledged that our states are very different, very diverse, and will present different challenges and different solutions. But in many respects, we have a lot in common. And permit me to reflect briefly on the three pillars of the alliance and connect them to our work in Barbados on these areas, work that Prime Minister Motley and her cabinet are committed to building upon. The first pillar is protecting the vulnerable. We've recognized that vulnerable families become easy fodder for the criminal element. These families are often dysfunctional, and children raised in such families are easy prey for the drug dons and other criminal-minded individuals. We've established in Barbados a One Family program. And in this One Family program, we've selected, through technical and scientific means, the 1,000 most vulnerable families in Barbados. Now, I anticipate that 1,000 families means very little to Brazil, Argentina, but in the context of a small Caribbean island, 1,000 families is a significant resource commitment. And in the One Family program, it is intended to break the intergenerational exchange of poverty. This program provides counseling, training for family members, access to further education, internet and laptops for the children. It is a comprehensive family-based intervention to change the course of life of these vulnerable families and the children that are raised in these families. We also have, and we're about to implement, a system of life coaches. We know the communities where these most vulnerable families live. We understand the dynamics. And through introducing a system of life coaches, we hope to be able to provide emotional and other support for these families so as to ensure that we can steer their children away from the criminal element. The second pillar, institutional strengthening of security, justice, and other sectors. This is one that I hold especially dear. One of the keys to fighting crime must be the area of criminal justice reform. An effective and efficient criminal justice system ensures that criminal matters move through the system quicker. It ensures that justice is not delayed, and it maintains the confidence of the public. Of course, this requires changes in how we police, how we prosecute, and how we punish. I am happy to report that this change is well underway in Barbados. I would highlight to you that when our administration came to government just 6 short years ago, Barbados had only 2 High Court judges hearing criminal cases in the High Court. And these judges rotated in and out of the criminal bench, half of the year doing civil matters, the other half of the year doing criminal matters. You would appreciate that the system would have been buckling under a rapidly growing backlog. This led to the criminal element becoming more confident and brazen in their criminal enterprises, since a murder case was known to take as much as 5 to 10 years. This then naturally led to loss of confidence in the justice system and dissatisfaction with law enforcement. In the last 6 years, we have increased the number of judges doing criminal matters from 2 to 8. Again, a small number in many of your jurisdictions. My friend Horace told me that they have just added 30 High Court judges. We've only added 6. But in the context of where Barbados is, this has been a significant achievement and has already been proving to be successful. The third pillar, disruption of illicit markets and financial flows. This is a work in progress for us. Sadly, over the years, we have focused too much on the prosecution of criminal offenses and hardly enough on the confiscation of the ill-gotten gains. But we've begun to change our stance, and we've enacted modern proceeds and instrumentalities of crime legislation, and we're also focusing our efforts on targeting the dollars, the houses, the cars, those things that the criminal element derives from their criminal enterprises. Yesterday's discussions show that the IDB is on solid ground with the development of the Alliance for Security, Justice and Development and its core objectives. The price to pay for rising crime, inequality, and insecurity is too high, and small island states such as Barbados and the rest of the region can ill afford that bill, but we can ill afford not to pay it. Resources which should be used to enhance the quality of life of our citizens are instead being used to meet the high costs of crime. Well-designed and targeted crime prevention programs are key to assisting us in breaking this vicious cycle, and I want to especially laud and give praise to Jamaica's presentation yesterday, which was a good example of what can be done when good data, good design, and the right people come together. Dr. Chang, I hope to learn much more about your case management system for at-risk youth. We must also work harder to help our citizens and make them understand that a holistic approach to crime fighting and citizen security includes them. They are critical actors, more important in several ways than government or the private sector in this fight. For example, during the formative years of a child's life, its parents are the key influencers, followed by the members of the extended family. They are the ones who inculcate behaviors and help to shape attitudes. Children mimic what they see, and by the time they reach secondary school, it is often difficult to get them to reorient their outlook. The bottom line is that the key to fighting crime is not always law enforcement. It is often going to be the result of other interventions. Mr. President, as we look to the future of the Alliance, we must do so bravely, securing the knowledge that the fight for our societies against the impact of transnational organized crime is one that we must win at all costs. It is heartening to see that our development partners are supportive of this alliance. This augurs well for better cooperation and coordination between the partners and the regions, as this will be a key indicator of the alliance's success. Sometimes, with the best will in the world, we find that donors often duplicate the efforts of others, and this places a burden on our human resources. Mr. President, I assure you that Barbados is fully committed to the precepts and the pillars of the Alliance, and not only will we demonstrate this by signing it today, we will demonstrate it by reinvigorated programs following the guidelines of the three pillars, helping to take us forward into a safer Barbados and a safer future. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General Marshall, for highlighting the gains that have been made, even as we continue to put in the work. We will now hear from the distinguished Minister of Interior of Ecuador and pro tempore President of the Alliance, Ms. Monica Palencia. Minister, you have the floor.
Pregunto, luego de que hemos escuchado que hay $1,000 millones que ha destinado Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo para fortalecer la seguridad, América Latina y el Caribe, ¿cómo está la moral? Contéstenme. ¿Cómo está la moral hoy? Bien. Así iniciamos, con un subidón de moral. ¿En qué países hay gobernanza criminal a cuyos territorios no ingresa ya la fuerza estatal? ¿Cómo circula el dinero de la minería ilegal? ¿Y cómo están las declaraciones para fines tributarios en América? ¿Qué carteles criminales se encuentran asentados en más de 2 países americanos? ¿Qué significado y sentido tiene que en el 2024 haya poquísimos planes de acción operativa en materia de seguridad que cuenten con una fiscalización en su enfoque de género? ¿Qué significado tiene todo ello para la seguridad hemisférica? Estimadas autoridades, distinguida primera ministra de Barbados, distinguido y querido amigo, presidente del directorio del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, queridos todos quienes integran este panel, queridos asistentes, me dirijo a todos ustedes, estimadas autoridades, representantes de países miembros, expertos técnicos, participantes, invitados, queridos todos. Es para mí un honor dirigirme a ustedes en esta reunión de la Alianza para la Seguridad, la Justicia y el Desarrollo, una iniciativa que busca lograr objetivos comunes como garantizar la seguridad, fortalecer nuestras instituciones y promover el desarrollo integral de nuestras comunidades, tanto en América Latina como en el Caribe. Un honor el que ya se esté trabajando activamente desde agosto hasta la fecha en el desarrollo de las temáticas fundamentales, siempre de la mano de los equipos técnicos del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, para quienes pido hoy un aplauso por ese trabajo que han hecho. Ecuador, como presidente pro tempore de esta alianza, asume con profundo compromiso la responsabilidad de estar al frente de este esfuerzo conjunto y lo hace desde la humildad intelectual y desde el profundo respeto a todos y cada uno de los países que están sentados hoy en esta mesa y también a los ausentes que forman parte de nuestra querida América. Es un esfuerzo y lo hacemos y lo vamos a realizar junto al comité directivo conformado por Barbados, Argentina, Paraguay, Chile y Brasil. Espero que no se me olvide alguno. Si se me olvida es por mi mala memoria y no por una intencionalidad de exclusión. En esta alianza, una oportunidad única para demostrar que la construcción de un ecosistema de cooperación regional y multilateral puede marcar la diferencia en la lucha contra el crimen organizado y en la construcción de sociedades más justas y más seguras. Hoy se nos ha dado un dato escalofriante. 3.4 del Producto Interno Bruto se pierde en los impactos del crimen organizado. Así nos lo ha dicho nuestro presidente. 3.4. Impresionante. Estamos aquí porque compartimos el desafío que nos ha planteado el crimen organizado, que se ha transformado en una amenaza contra la existencia de las democracias. Tal vez podríamos diseñar una nueva solución para un problema antiguo, ya que la delincuencia busca someternos con violencia en su carrera por el dinero y el poder político. Un primer gran paso en la solución es la realización de esta alianza y sus actividades. Gracias por la asistencia y gracias también a quienes la hacen posible. Gracias porque ese primer gran paso, esta alianza, es una realidad. La Alianza para la Seguridad, la Justicia y el Desarrollo, con el apoyo del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, BID, está llamada a constituirse en un espacio para la seguridad de las Américas y del Caribe, rompiendo mentalmente las fronteras por la seguridad hemisférica para combatir el flujo del narcotráfico, la trata de personas, las diversas formas de esclavitud, la minería ilegal, el tráfico de la flora y de la fauna, el lavado de activos y las actividades de la ciberdelincuencia, entre muchas otras más. Y voy a subrayar lo que acabo de decir en el sentido de que para ello necesitamos romper las barreras mentales que nos impide pensar más allá de nuestros territorios. Es la única manera, considero, o al menos la más efectiva, de que podamos lograrlo. Sin duda, siempre será la protección de la vida la que marque la prioridad de las agendas de compromiso humanista y, por supuesto, esa es y será nuestra línea con el apoyo del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y por ello el énfasis en tecnología es énfasis en tecnología para la prevención y también, si se puede y me adelanto, no solo para la prevención del delito, sino para la acción de combate a toda forma de corrupción y de impunidad. La impunidad y no solo la falta de rehabilitación marcan la reiteración de la actividad criminal, por lo que la gestión requiere para el control, el proceso, tecnología y recursos y otra mirada fundamental de y para la alianza. El análisis sin fronteras como nuevo paradigma constructivista del conocimiento para fortalecer esta alianza es nuestra propuesta. Y es una labor pendiente y necesaria, pues requerimos una mirada similar a la del crimen organizado. en cuanto a un tráfico, pero tráfico no de droga, tráfico de soluciones, pues la del negocio de la droga se mira por su exportación, mientras quienes combatimos el narcotráfico a lo mucho, a veces miramos por buenas prácticas para importar o para exportar esas soluciones. Necesitamos nuevas formas de entender, nuevos paradigmas de comprensión. Preguntar, ¿dónde está el tren de Aragua? Tiene una clara intencionalidad política, pues no pregunto de dónde salieron, sino que me cuestiono para saber cuáles son los países de residencia y de destino. ¿Conocemos acaso el registro de beneficiarios finales de las economías ilegales de nuestros países en cuanto al lavado de activos? Si surgen en nuestras cabezas dudas por el contenido y las respuestas, es porque aún nos falta libertad en ese primer abordaje, libertad para decir, para escuchar sin prejuicios y para buscar saber más sobre la realidad latinoamericana, las historias del crimen y todo lo que hay detrás. Atrás quedó el tiempo donde podíamos identificar con claridad las empresas lícitas de las otras, los contratos transparentes de los otros. No podemos hacer gestión antimafia, anticorrupción y de lucha contra el crimen organizado, sino a partir de generar el primer proceso indispensable, y que es el entender los flujos del crimen en América y los movimientos de capitales. La tecnología es indispensable, pero no es suficiente, pues ninguna tecnología puede suplir la ausencia de un recurso humano preparado para hacer, decir, reflexionar y pensar en función de América. Se requiere preguntar con pertinencia y con valentía. Se requiere planificar con coherencia y liderar con espíritu de nación grande. Tenemos que trabajar y duro y con humildad intelectual, lo reitero, pero también con mucha honestidad intelectual, reconociendo las circunstancias de nuestros territorios y nuestras vidas. Y tenemos que trabajar por una identidad que por mal entendidos nacionalismos a veces provoca el que tengamos dificultad para concebirnos como sujetos por fuera de nuestro territorio de inmediata acción. Podríamos, por ejemplo, y esa es una propuesta que quiero que trabajemos como parte de nuestra alianza, con la construcción de la ley antimafia, que gracias al gobierno argentino vamos a tener en breve como modelo, pero hacerlo diferente, con una perspectiva de género pensada e incluida con la cooperación técnica internacional. Y después tener, con la ayuda de la tecnología, la revisión del cumplimiento de todas las propuestas de esa ley antimafia y saber cómo van las mujeres en todo el tema que tiene que ver con el crimen organizado. Las mujeres como víctimas, las mujeres y los niños como víctimas, pero también en la utilización de nuestros niños y jóvenes para garantizar impunidades. Todos sabemos que combatiendo el reclutamiento bajaremos los homicidios intencionales, lo que no significa dejar de lado las aprehensiones de los criminales. La represión se vuelve indispensable en países donde la contención no se produjo o fue insuficiente. ¿Y por qué nos llama la atención los modelos con proyecciones de comportamiento si ya sabemos que es incrementando el costo del reclutamiento o reduciendo sus posibilidades que habrá una reducción de homicidios? Nos llama la atención porque respetamos el uso de las matemáticas. Nos llama la atención porque las data es importante. Nos llama la atención porque los datos matan relatos, incluso con intencionalidades políticas. Es por eso que tenemos que trabajar y rescatar con fuerza el uso de las matemáticas, el uso del análisis de datos, el uso de la minería de datos. Cabe resaltar que la región de América Latina y el Caribe tiene una tasa de homicidios 3 veces mayor al promedio mundial. El 50% de los homicidios totales en las Américas están relacionados con el crimen organizado en comparación con el 24% a nivel mundial. y este no es un dato mío, sino de la Oficina de la Droga de las Naciones Unidas, con corte al 2023. Y aún no logramos establecer la base de la organización colectiva simplemente para enfrentar el análisis en conjunto de esa criminalidad. La violencia no es uniforme ni igualmente intensa en nuestros países. Hay una gran diversidad, lo que significa que debemos urgentemente tener una reacción común y organizada. Y si las armas de fuego son el instrumento más utilizado de la región para dar muerte, son el crimen organizado y las armas de fuego los que no pueden quedar por fuera de una agenda común. Esto es, mientras la pobreza siga teniendo cara de mujer, sean víctima la mujer del crimen organizado y sean las armas los instrumentos con que en su mayoría se da muerte, esos temas tienen que formar parte de la agenda cuando hacemos referencia a la población vulnerable. Por lo anterior y sintetizando, sostenemos que no solo requerimos información y compartir resultados de las investigaciones, tanto de las académicas como de las policiales. Requerimos fortalecer el sentido de una América grande, de una América y su comprensión del Caribe, con un pensamiento diverso, el pensamiento en que nos una en nuestras asimetrías, las comprenda y nos dé ayuda en lo colectivo. Que todos nos preocupemos y nos ocupemos de las amenazas globales y de las asimetrías que se han vuelto estructurales. Ayer se habló de no duplicar esfuerzos con respecto a las propuestas de otros continentes, por lo cual debemos aplicar sinergias, construir mentalmente una América segura para poderla concretar en la práctica, lo cual es una gran diferencia con respecto a Europa, que fue pensada como tal y fue trabajada de forma tal que incluso, y por ejemplo, existe una policía común a fortalecer y fortalecía. Por eso hoy yo hago una invitación a pensar en nuestra Ameripol y a fortalecerla. No podemos seguir en América manteniendo concepciones en donde miremos solo lo que pasa en nuestros territorios. Tenemos que levantar ciertas reservas de información sobre criminales y entender que el crimen en un pueblo hermano terminará afectando a otros, por no decir a todos. No podemos simplemente dejar hacer y dejar pasar. Lo digo en relación a los flujos ilegales migratorios de tratas de personas. Todo ello nos desestabiliza. Podemos juntos avanzar. Con este llamado a una acción de todos nosotros, en un nosotros en el que incluyo al Ecuador y con el apoyo decidido del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, en quien creo y confío, ya que por sus acciones os conoceréis, concluyo mi intervención. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Minister Palencia. We now welcome Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security of Jamaica, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang. Deputy Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Honorable Mia Motley, CMP, Prime Minister of Barbados, Honorable David Lammy, MP, Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, welcome. Ms. Monica Palencia, pro tempore, President of the Alliance, Minister of the Interior, Ecuador, you just heard. Honorable Dale Marshall, Attorney General of Barbados, our host, President Ilan, other bilateral, regional, and sub-regional partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I want to first begin by commending and express my appreciation to the government of Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Motley and our government for hosting this very important conference in Barbados, and of course to the Inter-American Development Bank for signaling their interest in providing human and financial resources to move in this direction in a very positive manner of dealing with the major problem of organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean. Jamaica therefore welcomed the launch of the Latin American and Caribbean Alliance for Security, Justice and Development, along with its Caribbean chapter, One Safe Caribbean. This initiative represents a pivotal advancement in addressing the challenges of transnational organized crime through regional collaboration and a united commitment of shared goals. The Caribbean region is now turning its collective attention to the pressing issue of organized crime, a challenge that unfortunately Jamaica has faced for many years. Jamaica's geographic position situated at the crossroads of key hemispheric trade routes, poised between North and South America, makes us strategically important but also uniquely vulnerable. This position has been exploited by organized crime networks engaged mainly in illicit activities such as drugs and firearms trafficking and money laundering, and I'd say hundreds of years ago, the pirates. These illegal enterprises threaten to destabilize communities, undermine our institutions, and hinder our aspirations for sustainable social and economic development. In Jamaica, a significant portion of crimes committed across the country can be traced to the activities of criminal organizations with international connections. The high levels of violence, including targeted killings, are often the result of disputes among rival gangs and groups over their illicit gains. The rising tide of criminal activities across the region necessitates bold, coordinated responses that transcend national boundaries. The Alliance for Security, Justice and Development offers an ideal framework for fostering such collaboration and finding common solutions. In addressing organized crime, Jamaica has employed a holistic, multi-pronged strategy anchored in institutional strengthening, legislative action, social transformation, community engagement, and international partnership. We share some of these ideas with the team today. It should be noted that Jamaica is already implementing a number of the actions, in fact, which fall in the 4 pillars we have identified, which are in alignment with or similar to the objectives of this alliance. We have invested strategically in the institutional strengthening and capacity building of the security forces and our courts system. We have established joint operational task force to deal with advanced fee fraud and special units to target gangs and organized criminal gangs. We're executing on Plan Secure Jamaica, which is the country's first holistic security plan and the most enduring security program that focuses on 10 strategic priority areas. The government decided this at the very beginning, that the need for national security, public order is critical to ensuring that there is development and growth in the economy. As part of Plan Secure Jamaica, we are advancing the City Security Plan, a critical initiative aimed at establishing the institutional framework necessary for a sustainable and well-coordinated whole-of-government approach to social investment and transformation. A key milestone in this, which is an idea that we can share, is the effort to ensure the establishment of what we design the Citizen Security Business Group, which brings together the permanent secretaries from all the ministries, the financial secretary, and the heads of key agencies, including the Social Development Commission, the Training Institute, the head of the security forces, Jamaica's Constabulary Force, the JDF, the Planning Institute, and every single head of agency that is important in implementing a whole government approach. This supports effective oversight and collaboration. The government is also instituted to ensure that this works effectively, the Citizen Security Secretariat, a dedicated full-time body which operates out of the Ministry of National Security. Within this overarching framework, we have several programs that we have initiated, both from our local consolidated fund budget with our international partners. For example, the U.S. Agency for International Development and a government-to-government program deals with interfacing with our students in difficult areas. The Interministerial School Support Strategy expands this in order to seek to identify and work with the children in our vulnerable communities. The Violence Prevention Partnership, which is an initiative led by the Ministry of National Security, with support from the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Ministry of Youth and Education, and funded by the United Kingdom through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. This partnership targets marginalized at-risk young adults, in particular young males, in community that are highly vulnerable to the influence of organized crime. We utilize effectively the case management system, which identifies the individuals, their families, and then seek to provide the required support to move them out of the vulnerability and to bring them into the productive sector. We provide psychosocial support as well as effective training that will bring them into the productive sector of the economy. In addition, Jamaica has always been seen the importance of having clear rules related to fighting organized crime. We know that the solution must be driven from within, informed by our experiences and challenges. Through the years, we have introduced critical legislation in combating crime that raised the bar not only in Jamaica but across the region. These include the enactment of several critical pieces of legislation necessary to deal with organized criminals. We have the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Act of 2014, which is called the Anti-Gang Act. We have in fact prosecuted some 5 gang cases and have a long list waited to come to the courts. The Process of Crime Act 2007 has been amended several occasions and subsequent, which is aimed at bolstering the country's anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism framework to allow for the seizure of assets in the form of cash and property, including land where their assets have proven to have been acquired as a result of criminal activities. In fact, we have a pretty large portfolio of real estate. The Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Suppression and Punishment Act 2007 have been amended and developed and amended to deal with this particular heinous activity. Special piece of legislation, we have the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Act 2017. This is an all-embracing social economic transformation program in defined areas where we seek to do radical social transformative activity on the basis of a secure platform. Essentially, we take over a community with the army and the police and then introduce all the social services required to implement both physical and human resource transformation. The Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, MOCA, was established to deal with economic, financial crime, cybercrime, corruption, and advanced fee fraud across the system. A new Firearms Act designed to, in fact, provide a deterrence to those who trade and use firearms in crime, in which we have significantly increased the punishment for having illegal firearms, using firearms in crime, or in fact trading in firearms and all elements of it. All these, of course, require investment in the courts. Indeed, organized crime in the Caribbean challenges the entire criminal justice system. I must say, Minister, we have inherited, in particular the English-speaking Caribbean, have inherited what could be considered a very conservative court system from the British, not designed to deal with the kind of highly organized, heavily resourced criminal actors that dominate the Caribbean today and emerge in the entire region from Latin America and indeed even North America. So investment has to be made in the entire criminal justice system to in fact make it purpose useful, built for purpose for the kind of challenge we face in the criminal organization today. Jamaica sees its role as an important Caribbean neighbor in driving regional security efforts. Our consistent support for the CARICOM impacts has contributed to the development of regional crime-fighting strategies which have reaped many successes. By working with organizations like Interpol and participating in the various programs implemented through the Caribbean-based Security Initiative, the Caribbean Firearms Roadmap and the CARICOM Crime Gun Intelligence Unit, and other national security agencies across Latin America and the Caribbean, Jamaica has contributed to the strengthening of regional intelligence and sharing mechanisms, thereby enabling real-time sharing of critical data on organized crime. Jamaica continues to be a strong advocate for international collaboration in security by working closely with our ABC partners, that's a short for America, Britain, and Canada, which are our principal security partners in the region, in international sphere, and working in counter-narcotics, anti-money laundering, organized crime operations. Through this cooperation, Jamaica seeks to stay ahead of the fast-moving current of international activities related to organized crime, ensuring that our policies and practices comply with internationally recognized standards and best practices. The evolution of criminal activity, especially in the virtual world, raises new issues, which I listened to with some interest over the technical discussion we had over the last day, but it will require significant expansion of partnership to mitigate the challenge we face in this era, in particular, the smaller island states of the Caribbean. In closing, I want to emphasize that Jamaica remains steadfast in its commitment to combating organized crime and fostering safer communities and regional security. We stand ready to share our experience with our friends and to learn from our regional partners under this particular alliance. Together, through collective action and shared responsibility, we can realize the vision of a safer Latin American Caribbean region and indeed the achievement in the subchapter of One Safe Caribbean, a region where security, justice, and development are not just aspirations, but enduring realities. I remain hopeful that the alliance will mark the beginning of a transformative change for our people and our nation, and working together for one common good, a safe Latin American Caribbean region. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Chang. I now give the floor to the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, the Right Honourable David Lyndon Lammy. Welcome, Mr. Lammy.
Well, thank you very much, President Golfam, Prime Minister Motley, distinguished guests, for having me here today. And friends, may I just take this moment to say, as someone whose ancestors and parents stem from this great region, South America, Guyana, and here in Barbados, how wonderful it is to be here as the UK Foreign Secretary, a region that I feel deeply connected to and to which I have returned every year since I was 18. And this is a region where Britain has huge shared interests, not just in the Caribbean, but all over the Americas. We want to see more trade. We want to see more investment. We want to see more climate action and much more done to crack down on the threats that we are discussing this morning. I'm acutely aware that as I stand here and look at this wonderful audience of such tremendous diversity, that I'm in a region that reflects mankind. We stand here in the pioneer region, the region where the modern world was forged. And it's a modern world that was forged on the back of, at the time, a great invention. An invention that begun actually in China in the 11th century and then became industrialized in the 15th by Europeans. And that invention was the gun. And it's an invention that still dogs this great part of the global community. And of course, there was another invention. In the middle of the 19th century, industrialized, popularized cocaine, again dogging the region. And then human development created fantastic criminal justice systems in countries like my own, the United Kingdom, wonderful European countries like Spain. But criminal justice systems designed for the streets of London and the streets of Madrid in the 19th century that need rapid updating for communities in Latin, South America, and here in the Caribbean. So across this region, we see how security threats are not a problem for one single country or another, but a problem for all of us, and a problem that's getting worse for all of us. Gangs producing drugs in Latin America, they ship them through the Caribbean, and they sell them on the streets of Europe and North America. And they leave a trail of damage in their wake, lives ruined by the horrors of addiction. Young people led into a life of crime, guns proliferating across communities, spikes in violence and murder, particularly against women and girls. And I know that for countries in the Caribbean, this can feel brutally unfair. Caught in the middle. Suppliers and markets are elsewhere, but they draw their guns and their drugs into this region. 8 out of 10 of the highest rates of murder in the world are in Latin America and the Caribbean, this pioneer region that forged modern mankind. And with Jamaica, Deputy Prime Minister, sadly the country with the worst rate of all. And you're also caught in webs of corruption and illicit finance, tying, of course, organized criminal groups in the Americas with financial centers in places like London. Britain and the overseas territories are not isolated from these challenges, both in my own constituency in London, of Tottenham, and in British overseas territories like the Turks and Caicos Islands or the BVI. We see drug dealing, horrendous gang violence, illegal migration, huge ties to gangs all over the Americas. And corruption is as much a problem for us in the United Kingdom, driving up, by the way, house prices in the City of London. Much of it built on illicit finance affecting the lives of ordinary people. And because these are threats to all of us, we are committed to doing more to tackle them with you all. We all know what's needed: stronger borders, stronger law enforcement, stronger courts, better information sharing between jurisdictions, clamping down on corruption, but also giving genuine options to young people so they have jobs and opportunity. They benefit from the growth in our economies, and they have alternatives to gang life. I know this from my own inner city community of Tottenham in North London, that you need action in all of these areas, upstream and downstream, to make a real difference. And that's why I'm very pleased that this new Labour government in the United Kingdom is announcing £27 million of new funding for the region. This will build up law enforcement. Yes, you can applaud. It's not easy getting money out of our treasury, but I did it. This will build up law enforcement's intelligence gathering capabilities in the Northern and Eastern Caribbean, giving them the tools to take on the criminals. And it will support public campaigns to discourage individuals from turning to violence. Alongside this, we're extending for 3 years our support jointly with the United States for criminal justice systems in the region and reform, including here in Barbados. And as I know from my own legal training, you cannot have security without justice and accountability. Finally, we're also proud to partner with the IDB. You've been doing tireless work on security and justice in the region for many years. And I'm announcing on this visit that we're increasing our shareholding in IDB Invest, your private sector arm. And this will allow the bank to double your finances for the region. And we will give £5 million specifically to your One Caribbean Fund to strengthen institutions like CARICOM and the regional security system. We want to see the IDB's work in this area go from strength to strength, and are encouraging other partners to give it their full support. And through these bilateral investments and through the long-standing work of our diplomats, our law enforcement officers, and development experts, we're making life harder for criminal gangs across the region. But I'm also well aware of the need to make life harder for criminal gangs back home in Britain as well. For too long, it's been too easy for criminals to launder their money in the UK and other financial centres. And I can promise you today, under this new Labour government, this is changing. We've been sanctioning kleptocrats and their enablers, and this week I appointed Baroness Margaret Hodge, who has long championed these issues in our national life, as the Prime Minister's next anti-corruption champion. And we will make the UK a hostile environment for the corrupt and their ill-gotten gains. And we will work with you to clamp down on corrupt and criminals in your country and to keep your people's wealth safe from their grasp. Finally, let me touch on a country that we all care about so very deeply, a country with a tremendous history in the context of the Caribbean, and that is our beloved Haiti. There has been shocking lawlessness this past year, a sobering reminder of what happens when criminal gangs are left unchecked. An estimated 1 million children out of school, cholera spreading. This poses huge risks, real risks of regional overspill, and I pay tribute to all those in this room providing money and personnel to the Kenyan-led multinational security support mission. The United Kingdom is playing its part. We're providing £5 million to support the mission's human rights monitoring capacity particularly. Friends, there is a lot more to be done, but there is a lot that we're trying to do, and a lot more to come, so that all of our citizens across our countries have secure and prosperous lives. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Foreign Secretary Lamy, for the United Kingdom's strong commitment to the Alliance and its Caribbean chapter, One Safe Caribbean. It is now my distinct honor to welcome our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Motley, to provide us with some inspiration for the launch of the Alliance and its Caribbean chapter, One Safe Caribbean. Prime Minister Motley, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My dear friend, President of the Inter-American Development Bank, Ilan Golfan, and welcome back, this time in a different capacity. For those of you who didn't know, Ilan was previously with the IMF and therefore integrally responsible and for working and helping to stabilize us during these few years. And we thank you for your continued friendship to Barbados. The Inter-American Development Bank has been a great partner of our country in this moment of transition and transformation. To my dear friend, the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, it is so good to be able to refer to you as the Foreign Secretary. And you have not only done your ancestors in Guyana well, but may I say to the Barbadian family, he has done his Barbadian ancestors well. Welcome home. Of course, Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica have just returned from your country, and I thank you for being here and sharing with us in the manner in which you have done over the course of the last 2 days. And Madam Pro Tempore President, Madam, I should probably say Senora Palencia, thank you for sharing the experience in Central and Latin America, which, even though we are in the same geographical region, the differences in our criminal justice system and in our legal systems require an appreciation and a sensitization being developed if we are to work successfully, because we can be assured that those involved in transnational crime are working without reference to the differences in our legal systems and our language. And of course, my dear brother, the Honorable Dale Marshall, who has carried the brunt of the heavy lifting in allowing this government to move from a 19th century criminal justice system to a 21st century new system that is going to be fit for purpose when completed. But may I say, and he has been very modest this morning because he has not referred to the massive suite of legislation to fight corruption, and indeed with the assistance of the British with the criminal justice system, I see Sarah here, and our consultations in the last 2 years, a large suite of legislation to be able to ensure that we modernize how we treat to this very difficult and vexatious issue. The world as we know it is in the midst of changing. And in a very real sense, Foreign Secretary, you contextualize for us what really is at the core of the problem. I have come to say often, guns do not walk and guns do not talk. But guns have the ability to be a major destabilizer and disruptor of our civilization. Indeed, the questions must be answered by criminologists and sociologists as to why there are certain regions of the world where the spectacle of the gun has risen to be as disruptive a feature, and why there are other parts of the world where literally gun crime is at minimal levels. When we celebrated our Independence Day this year, and we had some guests, I made the point that our region pays a very, very heavy price for the Second Amendment rights of those in the United States of America. The fact that geographically there is contiguous land boundaries for the majority of the Americas does not help. But the reality is that even as we move from the land boundaries, islands cannot exist without trade. And regrettably, we don't only see legal trade, but we see illegal trade. I contextualize it in this way because the efforts of one country fighting a battle on crime or on the illicit flow of guns or the illicit flow of money will never work. And what is required is the level of cooperation and the alliance which we have come here today to settle. That the Caribbean chapter will emerge from here is consistent with the decisions of the CARICOM heads of government. And only 3 weeks ago, tomorrow, on the 22nd of November, we met in Georgetown in a symposium hosted by Barbados in Georgetown. And we arrived at what will come and has come to be known as the George Bridge Declaration, capturing both the location and the host, reflecting the will of heads of government. And what is that simply? That there must be a determined effort, day by day by day by day, to ensure that crime and violence do not disrupt our societies and do not dislocate or distract from the very other difficult issues that we face in bringing development to our people. We have agreed, for example, that there are aspects of this multidisciplinary fight that must be treated at the regional level and the hemispheric level. Indeed, it is clear that the opportunity where resources are scarce, and I don't only mean financial resources, I mean human resources. For the biggest issue in this region now is in fact the skills deficit. I say often that it is not reserves that keep me up at night. It is the absence of skills across the critical areas that we need to hold our societies together and to build our societies up that is really at risk because there is a dearth of those skills. It therefore means that cooperation is even all the more important, whether in terms of how we treat to legislative precedents, whether it is with respect to how law enforcement will work together, using and leveraging not just the technology, but leveraging the cooperation that is utterly and absolutely critical between the law enforcement agencies. We have so recognized this in CARICOM, and we have the example of the regional security system, which has been strengthened recently by Guyana's admission into that body, along with Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean states. But we know instinctively that this has made a real difference to our ability to be able to fight crime and to build peace among our population. Whether we like it or not, we have, in the context of a single market and a single economy, to recognize that it is not only legal goods that move and legal people that move, and therefore that cooperation and alliance is the bedrock upon which we can maintain the stability of this region. The George Bridge Declaration also made a determination that somebody must come to work every day to preside over the regional collaboration that is critical to strengthen the actions of individual nation states. And I'm happy to report that the former Attorney General of Belize, Mr. Godfrey Smith, has agreed to accept that responsibility for us. I say so, conscious that in a previous time, I played a similar role, reporting to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who was the lead Prime Minister. And while the motivation for that cooperation would have been to allow the region to host the first global games that we ever did with Cricket World Cup 2007, it led to the Caribbean community creating the institutions that we now take for granted. The Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, the Joint Regional Communications Center, that is the nerve center for the Advanced Passenger Information Systems and now the Advanced Cargo Information Systems. And indeed, the Regional Intelligence Fusion Center, all three of which were created in 2007, and ultimately it led to security being declared the fourth pillar of the regional integration movement. We have come to a similar juncture again, almost 20 years later. The George Bridge Declaration recognizes that there needs to be a review of the regional architecture supporting security in this region. Similarly, we recognize that the holistic approach has to be captured institutionally. And that is why my own government, along with others in the region, have been quietly establishing advisory bureaus on citizen security, advisory councils on citizen security, recognizing that it is only where the society as a whole comes together that we are likely to be successful, because the decline in values and the inclination to use weapons and the failure to be able to allow our people to resolve conflict in a more amicable way lies not simply in the prescription of policy by governments, but indeed in the manner in which we raise our children, in the manner in which we hold our families accountable, in the manner in which we hold our communities accountable for their day-to-day actions, and not simply when a murder is committed. I reflect on this because I want to say, not just to those of us who are engaged in policy in this room, but to all law enforcement and to all social partners, that we have a responsibility for accountability, not just in the jobs that we do, but simply in our role as citizens of the countries in which we live. The Charter of Barbados imposes on us a responsibility, a duty that goes beyond self and family and job, to be able to recognize that it is in the collective efforts of ordinary citizens that we shall win this battle. The reality is that we have to be able to work with each other and to stop being consumed only by the individualism that will cause us to ignore when our neighbor's child is doing wrong, that will cause us to ignore when we see breaches of the peace which then mushroom into crime. And while we depend on our law enforcement, particularly our police, to lead in this effort, not just to fight crime, but to keep peace and to keep order, it cannot be their responsibility alone. The Honorable Attorney General shared with you our One Family program in Barbados, and the fact that our first engagement, even with the first 1,000 families, is just the first of what we must do, recognizing that we have to be able to do these things in bite-sized chunks, and we have to be able to claim success, because success must be a habit and not just an aberration or an isolated act upon which we have a nice conversation about at the opening ceremony of a function. I ask us to recognize that if we take the holistic approach to lifting families up, and while there is no direct link between poverty and crime, poverty certainly removes options and freedoms from people that they otherwise would need to help them walk along a path that removes them or those who they love from the clutches of those who want to exploit and to be able to undermine them. We have to recognize that this is not a battle of governments alone. This is a battle for societies and for people. Just as we've said, if there is 1 out of every 5 families who are below the poverty line, the good news is that there are 4 out of 5 who are above it. And if the 4 out of 5 who are above it work with the institutions that we have and the government that we have, then we have the capacity to be successful to remove our citizens out of the abyss of poverty and to give them the freedom of choice, as Amartya Sen would tell us. But I go further. It is not only in the battle against poverty that the 4 out of 5 must rise. It is in the maintenance of peace and in the wrestling to the ground of crime that those who are law-abiding citizens must now see as their responsibility to work with the agencies and entities who may treat to this as a frontline responsibility. If we do not resolve to ensure that we can work together as societies and as regional alliances, we will not make this journey together successfully. And I ask us, therefore, my friends, to reflect on this opportunity, not simply to resolve the issues that are formally before us, but to build the networking among you as you meet here today, recognizing that in the face of transnational crime, the entity or the person who is sitting next to you and who may not at this point even speak the same language as you may be the most important person for you in resolving an issue over the course of your working career. That separation between Latin America and the Caribbean that has come by historic links and as a result of language has now to be bridged because it does not exist in the eyes of the criminal community. We have many prisoners from Latin America in our prison, and I'm sure across the entire Caribbean it is the same. And I have no doubt that Latin America and Central America have many prisoners from the Caribbean who do not speak Spanish but speak other languages, English or French or Dutch. And therefore the lesson that we must leave here is that this alliance and the ability to communicate and partner at the international level, but within our domestic boundaries, will be the only basis for success in wrestling crime to the ground. Most regions of the world today have theaters of war. We do not. But we have theaters of conflict and violence. It is up to us to ensure that our region, not just the Caribbean Sea, but the Americas, remain truly a zone of peace. And the zone of peace will come not simply in being happy that there is no formal war, but being satisfied that guns do not play the same role as if there was formal war. In January of this year, more people died in Haiti than died in Ukraine. It is a sobering fact and statistic. I therefore end as I started in thanking the President of the Inter-American Development Bank and our partners here today, in recognizing that as we seek to build out our societies, as we seek to fight the larger existential battles from climate right back through, regrettably, we must also add to the burden that which has now become simply too commonplace in almost every country in the region, at varying degrees, but nevertheless commonplace, the spectacle of violence in communities, and indeed the presence of assault weapons, which when placed in the hands of teenagers or imbeciles or reckless people can be weapons of mass destruction. Let us therefore resolve, not just as CARICOM to build on the George Bridge Declaration, but as countries of the Americas to build on this regional security and justice alliance. I thank you.
We thank you, Prime Minister Motley, for the clear vision and urgency of your words that will drive us towards action. The first step towards action we will take today as we officially establish the Alliance for Security, Justice, and Development with the official signing of the declaration from today on to be known as the Barbados Declaration. Now, I pass the floor to Ms. Heather Sutton from the IDB team to read the declaration.
We, the representatives of the countries and institutions gathered in the city of Bridgetown, reaffirm the critical importance of citizen security for the well-being and development of our nations. With this in mind, we declare our intention to launch and join the Alliance for Security, Justice, and Development to coordinate vision and responses in addressing organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Alliance aims to promote evidence-based regional, sub-regional, and national actions and public policies to strengthen institutions, prevent community harms, including youth recruitment, curb illicit financial flows, and mobilize resources to address and provide coordinated responses to the rapid expansion, growth, and influence of organized crime in our nations. The Alliance leverages experience, knowledge, lending programs, technical expertise of several organizations and MDBs, including the Inter-American Development Bank and its member countries. The IDB will act as the technical secretariat of the Alliance, providing technical and strategic support for the planning and coordination of the Alliance's work. We express our support for this initiative, which seeks to transform shared challenges into opportunities for a safer, fairer, and more prosperous future for present and future generations in Latin America and the Caribbean. The declaration will be signed in Bridgetown, Barbados on December 12, 2024 by the following countries: Argentina, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, República Dominicana, Suriname, y Uruguay. And St. Lucia has just expressed their interest in joining. We welcome that interest. Organizations are also signing today. These organizations include the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, CAF, the World Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, the Italo-Latino American Organization, Interpol, the Organization of American States, the Regional Security System, CARICOM Impacts, the Pan-American Development Foundation, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Crime, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. The Inter-American Development Bank signs the declaration as an honorary witness, and other partners such as Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime have indicated their support for the objectives of the alliance.
At this moment, all the declaration signatories will come to the table to sign the document. All other organizations will be signing from their seats. And once the final signature has happened, we will invite you all, the signees, to the stage for the official photo. So kindly indicate once we have all signed our documents. Once again, once we have all of the signatures, we then invite the signees to the stage for an official photo. Please use either side of the stage. There are staircases on both sides.